Hi.
Hi.
So, for those who are viewing this, I'm Paul, and I'm the one down in the corner, and this is Olivia, and she's the pretty one in the middle. And what we're going to talk about today is wedding photographer, and it's of interest to me because I made my living for many years as a wedding photographer. The first 25 years, I had a different career, and I shot weddings on weekends. But since about 2000, it's what I did full time, and so I've shot well over 800 weddings, which it might sound like a lot. It actually isn't when you spread it over 40 years. But when I was trying to pay all the bills through weddings, for a few years I shot up to 50 weddings. In fact, for 3 years in a row, I shot exactly 50 weddings a year. Um, and I'm retired. Um, Olivia's the other end of the spectrum. While she's a very accomplished photographer, she's relatively new to wedding photography. And I'm not going to tell her story, but like many people who are pretty good with a camera, you're going to have a friend at some point say, "Hey, can you shoot my wedding?" And the smart answer is hell no. But if you're not that smart, like neither Olivia or I were, we want to talk a little bit about what you need to do. There's one point I want to make, and it's about equipment. Wedding photographers, some of them have the latest camera, the latest lenses, and many of them don't, because remember, they're also paying for their car or their mortgage or saving for retirement or putting the kids through college. So they don't necessarily buy the latest and greatest as soon as it hits the market. And if you think back, when I went from film to digital in, I think it was 2001, Canon and Nikon had just come out with 6 megapixel sensors, and so I shot a couple hundred weddings at 6 megapixels, and I never had a bride say, "God, your resolution's too low, your sensor isn't big enough," because that's what was available at the time. So I will. And also say that now Olivia and I both shoot with Olympus cameras, which is really neither here nor there in terms of the process of shooting a wedding. It just will not give you any shoulder and back pain. But I never badmouth Nikon or Canon. I mean, Nikon paid my bill. Nikon allowed me to pay my bills for many years. Okay, so having said all of that, Olivia, why don't you tell us a little bit? I mean, you're an Olympic visionary, relatively new one, so that's a fresh experience for you. And why don't you tell us a little bit about not how you got started in photography, because it's a few years ago, and we also have an article on our blog that talks about that, but how you sort of, where you started with the types of things that you enjoyed shooting, and spend a minute on that, and then we'll go to how you got involved in shooting your very first wedding.
Well, that's kind of difficult to answer because I kind of like shooting everything, but macro was the thing that really dragged me into photography. I was fascinated by the tiny details I saw when I was in the botanical garden, especially fascinated by drops. They're just amazing. I could talk a half an hour about drops.
About dewdrops.
Especially dewdrops, yeah. Yes, they're the best. And everything you can find in them, the reflections they have, and then I, of course, love the whole macro world, the plant world. But I also find it really interesting that in the smallest things you find the same structures that you find in the big things as well. So, but the macro world is fascinating in that sense that not everybody looks at that. And when I send pictures to my friends who are not specifically into photography and look at, photo sites all day long, they see things they've never seen before, and I get reactions from them that I kind of make them happy with that they're like, you make me remember to look at details again, or to look around again, or, to appreciate a flower more, and things like that, to look at it differently. So that's one big thing. Concert photography, which is funny because we're going to talk about wedding photography now, but I actually kind of like shooting natural situations and grab that moment that is so beautiful. I think there's a lot of beautiful moments everywhere. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think that covers it.
Shooting concerts, I think, probably, well, both of those, I mean, at every wedding I've ever shot, I had to shoot details, the lace or the embroidery on the gown, the rings, things like that. Not necessarily macro, but certainly tight close-ups and detail. And a lot of weddings, especially the receptions, take place in the evening and in relatively darker venues than certainly macro photography takes place. So those two things sort of come into play and set you up to handle the situations you're going to find in a wedding. So
absolutely.
How did you end up shooting your first wedding?
Well, exactly how you described it. It wasn't really a friend, though. That was kind of, I thought I was very brave of the couple asking me. She's a musician too, but we're not friends. We just know each other. We, cross each other's paths. And one day she wrote me a message and said, I really like the pictures you're posting on Facebook, which were macro and landscape pictures most of the time, but I like the way you shoot. Would you shoot my wedding? And that's how it happened. And I at first I was like, oh. But then I thought, I should grab the opportunity and just try it, But I did take some pressure off myself by working quite cheap. But it was more for myself, so I wouldn't feel too bad if it went wrong, So yeah.
So what equipment did you use for the wedding?
I bought new equipment, which is really stupid. I spent more money on the wedding than I made. But I bought a second camera because I thought I cannot go with one camera. If anything goes wrong and I miss out on that one moment of, their hopefully the one in their life, but still a special moment, and I miss out on it because my camera gives up for whatever reason, that's just not going to happen. So the first thing I did was buy a second camera body, which was, I couldn't buy the most expensive one. I bought an Olympus EM5 Mark II. I usually shoot with EM1 Mark II. And a lot of lenses I already had. So I did use my macro lens. I used it to take pictures of the rings and of some details. I mean, you can do it with another lens, but if I have a macro lens, why not? I used the portrait lens 1.2, and I used two. Well, actually, the wedding was in 2 days. So depending on the day, I took a little bit different equipment because the first wedding day was just with family, very small group. Was basically doing the state affair, the signing of the contract, and then a dinner. And the second wedding day was a big party, reception. Concerts, even music and everything. So for the first one, I knew I was going to take pictures of them in different situations, walking to the wedding. So I needed a flexible lens. So I took the 12-200 with me just to be flexible in matters of distance and not having a fixed lens. So I bought the macro, the portrait lens. I bought a 17mm 1.8 to have wider angle and good light sensitivity, and the 12-200. So I brought 4 lenses, a flash, and the 2 cameras and 2 batteries each. That's all I had. Extra SD cards, all the safety stuff.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I brought.
Do you remember how you had, what lenses you had on what cameras most of the time?
I left the 17mm on the EM5.
Okay.
Because I knew I was gonna, if my camera would stay alive, then the emergency case wouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. I knew I probably would use both cameras at the same time when they were in that, I don't know how you call that. That stateroom where they sign.
Yeah, it's
because
In the States, we would say the courthouse. In Spanish, it would be registro civil. But
yeah, well, the courthouse, but the room was really dark. I knew that, and I knew that was probably the only situation where I had to shoot wide angle fast, because there's a shooting afterwards with the family, but then you have time and you can take a distance. But the room wasn't very big, and I knew I wanted to take pictures of them, the two of them, but I also wanted to take pictures of all their family sitting behind. So I kept the 17mm on my EM5 and had the portrait lens on the EM1. And that's how I shot. And because the whole ceremony only lasted 10 minutes, but there was the signing, and there was the kissing, and there was the family clapping. I was like shooting all the time, one hand, with both hands. Which it was that. I mean, if you have a dark room, I think that is something that is really important. That you have at least f2.8 better lower. Because that's, you don't know if you can use a flash, or if you have to be able to be flexible in these moments. Depending, of course, if you know everything about it and you can go there beforehand, and then you can choose. But if you don't know exactly, it's good to have something that can deal with low light situations, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Did you use a flash at all during this civil ceremony?
No. And I did not do it for several reasons. I knew that sometimes, I heard that sometimes the people in that in the state office didn't like photographers too much, and I thought a flash would be too disturbing. I also thought it would take too much time to reload, and also I have to be honest with you, I wasn't that used to flash photography. I kind of taught myself a crash course before that in panic that I wouldn't be able to do the job. I used the flash before, sometimes just bouncing it off if the light wasn't good, but not in the room. Also, there were too many windows. The walls were pink. It wasn't really ideal.
Okay. And then the next day was the party. So was this in a restaurant or a ballroom? Or?
Trauma. It was in a. It's kind of a party location restaurant kind of thing. They do brunches, but they also do parties. And I thought, I was scared of the shooting, because that is a situation I haven't had a lot before, and I didn't have much time, and it had to be in between, certain program points. And the light outside was horrible. There was so much light. It just too much light everywhere, and too bright, and too many contrasts. And I had to last minute change the location and try to find a shadowy place somewhere. And after that, I thought the worst part was over, and I was really confident in going inside, because I was like, I've shot, concerts in really, really horrible light conditions with fog and everything, and I could deal with it. So I should be fine. But this room was the worst room I ever had to take pictures in. When I got into the room, I kind of got a small panic attack, because it was completely dark. So that's the go party aspect of the room. All the walls were black, so no flash. I knew I couldn't use flash. I tried one flash picture of someone, but there was a lot of metal as well, and it just looked horrible. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I have to deal with that flash. I had to go up to ISO 5000 at points, which is higher than I had ever, had to go in any concert situation. And then the light in the room was very somber, and it only there was a couple of windows that were very big, so that was not ideal either, because then, it was against the light. And the rest of the light was everything coming directly from above, very dim and neon magenta red. And then there was long tables, and everybody sitting there had a huge shadow in their face, and the rest of the face was magenta. And it was just I just tried. I was like, I just have to shoot. I just have to do it. I have to try to get these situations. There was also a stage, but it wasn't really properly lit. And there was a huge kind of dim lamp right in front of it, which was also not ideal. And what kind of saved me was that I wanted to shoot black and white. I was too stupid to realize that, I don't know, I must have done something wrong. It showed it to me black and white, but in the end the pictures were colored. But the showing it black and white was an awesome idea, because that took all my anxiety about the magenta and the red away. And in the end, I edited most of them black and white. So black and white really kind of saved me out of that situation. But I was pretty tense. But I got, like, after a half an hour or something, I got to the point where I was just really like, I have to focus on the couple. You know, it was a really beautiful ceremony and party. The musicians were great. And so I was just trying to just focus on them and capture their joy, the moment where their best friend would sang a song to them, and the bride would just be, glowing with happiness and watching, and when the father of the bride hugged her or gave a speech, and I could be, the emotions of it just got me back into it, and I didn't really care anymore, and, it was just like, I'll have to see afterwards what I can do about the pictures. But, so I think that's important. I mean, if you don't have a feeling for what those pictures mean to the people that you're doing them for, then it's going to be difficult. You need to catch those moments, and it's the emotion. And also there, I think you shouldn't worry too much about image quality. I think the bride rather has a really pixely image of an important situation than none. So it's better to take the picture and not have ideal settings than to be fiddling around with your camera and not take the picture in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I agree with that. So you're located where?
In Basel, Switzerland.
In Switzerland, okay.
Yeah. So
if I'm in New York and I'm getting married, can I send you a ticket?
A plane ticket?
Yeah.
If you pay for it, fine. I'll come.
So anyway, we don't know when people will see this, so at some point you may be completely booked with weddings, and there'll be a waiting list. But we will put this will be part of a blog article, so we'll put links to your personal contact information, and I guess at some point you'll put this up on your YouTube channel, as I will, and for people who find us there, we'll both put links to the blog back there, so they can get all that information if they need to contact you. And what would you say to somebody who's just thinking about offering services as a wedding photographer? What should they be aware of most?
Plan a lot, but be extremely flexible at the same time.
Okay.
So I would really talk to the couple, and I would try to think of situation. You not only ask them what you want to take pictures of, maybe because they don't think like a photographer. So, for example, ask them if they want to have photos, or suggest having photos of them getting ready. That's a beautiful moment too. Don't forget to take pictures of the rings or details. You have to be clear what you offer, because there are some people who only want a wedding shooting, or they want to have the whole event photographed, and then you have to really be prepared and think of the times. I made a time plan, like a schedule, and tried to think of what I wanted to really have captured in that time, and prepare for a lot of moving. Well, at least I did, because I took pictures of everything, and when they were walking to the place, they took a little boat over the Rhine, and I waited behind them, and then I took a picture of them behind, hand in hand, walking towards the Rhine, and then I ran in front of them, to get a picture from the front, and it's a lot of moving, and a lot of it's not just a calm job, and also you need to have a good relationship with a bride specifically. She needs to feel comfortable with you, because you're going to spend a lot of time with her, even though you're not a guest, you know. So it's kind of important, because if you get their trust, I think the pictures are going to end up better, especially for the shooting, and they will trust you, and I think that's really important. And then, yeah, be flexible, because things can change, and even though they want everything pictured, the most important is that the wedding, you know, goes well. And, you know, sometimes they have to change plans because something goes wrong. And you need to be prepared for that, I think. I think these are the two most important, and the bride is the most important.
Yeah.
You know, she's just the most important.
But not the groom?
And,
But not the groom? I mean, aren't we important too?
yeah, you are important too.
Just not the most important.
She's the most important. She needs to be happy. She's probably the one who's ordering anyway.
Yeah.
And don't forget, I think also one thing that is important is try, like at the reception, to get a picture of everyone that is kind of important, because they probably want to order some extra copies at the relatives, you know. And if you like leave out the grandma and there's not a single picture of the grandma there, you know, that would be so try to, and that's what I did at the reception when it was only the family. Of course I did group pictures, but I checked out, okay, this is the mom, this is they seem all to be really important, so I have to make sure I have at least one picture of them, you know, more or less good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's just, you really have to think about it and it will go better, I think. And you have to be ready to be knackered afterwards. Very British, but you have to be, I was dead after the first day. I was completely dead. But it was a good experience, and they seem to have liked it. I personally, of course, I always think I could have done better, I could have more experience, you know, the photo shooting could have been better. But they're very happy, and that's the most important thing. They were very happy. So I think I would do it again, but next time I would, you know, I would be even better prepared, because, you know, the more you do it, the more you know what kind of situations could be happening. And I would never, ever do it again for so little money.
Uh-huh.
Because I thought it was just really too little money for the amount of work I had. I think that's, yeah. Because then I did another couple hours, and then I did this, and then that, and it was kind of, if you have another job nearby, you know, next to it, then that's, yeah. And, you know, depending on what happened, like what was a big surprise for me is, because the light conditions were so bad on the actual party, I had to spend much more time editing than I actually expected, because I just really had to basically denoise all of them, you know, make all of them black and white, and really had to edit afterwards for them to be more or less okay.
Uh-huh.
So that was something I didn't expect. I couldn't really charge her more for it, but it was my own. I wanted to deliver good images, so yeah, something unexpected, I guess, can always happen. You know,
it's true. What do you edit in? What software do you use for your editing?
I started off with Lightroom and Photoshop. Never really used Photoshop, and then I got annoyed with it, and I spent a whole day trying all the known programs, you know, that are, you know, upper end photo programs, and I ended up with Capture One, which is, the reason for it was because just a simple raw file, the way it treats it and when it opens up, was just so much better than the Lightroom. You know, same picture in Lightroom, especially for dark images. And I really like it because you can work with layers. You don't need for every you know, post processing. You don't need to always open up Photoshop, which I now have Affinity to replace that. But you don't need a program that offers layers for every little thing. You can do small things also in Capture One, and I think it has some awesome features. You have to get used to it because it's very different from the layout, is what I use, and I really like it. I'm happy with it.
Good. Well, thank you. So, are there any answers you want to give to questions that I haven't been smart enough to ask?
Answers I want to give to questions.
So we'll just say
No.
I asked all the really good questions, and there's nothing else to.
I think I answered some of the unanswered questions just out of my own genius.
Yeah, I think you did. I don't think I actually asked too many questions. You pretty much covered it all. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time. We'll put this up within a few days, and I'll let you know when that's done.